Did Scout Motors just disrupt the off-road industry forever? It's definitely some cool stuff because I think a lot of this can transfer over to the Jeep crowd. What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. We are back in the shop with another exciting video, and this one has to do with a brand that has kind of been revitalized from the dead or just revived out of the ground. The Scout Motors Terra and Traveler are now available to pre-order. Now, this comes after a long time of being gone of the International Scout, produced by a company called International Harvester. Many decades ago, over 40 years ago, this thing was being produced. And I recall my uncle actually owned one. He said he drove it around in New York City and loved the thing. Doors could be removed, top could be removed, and it was almost a competitor to the Ford Bronco, to the Jeeps, all of that lifestyle, but it was made by a farm and implement company. In today's video, what I want to do is kind of discuss what we saw at the launch of the Terra and the Traveler, talk about what it's going to do to the off-road industry, because this is a very new and exciting type of vehicle, and then at the end of this, give our personal take on it, maybe throw a little surprise at the end that we might do on our phones. So obviously the launch was just a few days ago, and I was sitting there patiently waiting on my iPad for the launch to pop up on YouTube. I think it was delayed by about a half hour or something like that. And the thing that I noticed on Facebook is that there was already a lot of buzz from many of my friends and people that I know talking about wanting to see this vehicle. Now, what Scout Motors did is they revealed two brand new vehicles. Their Terra, which is the new truck that they have, as well as the Traveler, which is going to be the SUV. It's a four-door, really neat SUV. And they've got a lot of cool specs that were listed out. I will definitely tell you, the initial launch, when we were seeing all the heritage, the stories about the International Scout, seeing all of that going on, it was very neat because they definitely took into play a lot of what that International Scout brought with it to the new design of both of these vehicles. And then the second thing I will tell you is that at first I thought the thing was just an EV, and I was initially very disappointed. I am not against EV vehicles, but I think reviving a brand that is over 40 years old, for us, is kind of tricky to just launch and just be a pure EV. I was pleasantly surprised to learn that this is not. Some quick specs out of both of these vehicles, which I found very impressive. From what I can tell, at least the Traveler is, I believe the Terra is as well, it is both body on frame. So much like the Wrangler, you've got the tub and the frame, and then they join together with body mounts. So it's not a unibody like the Jeep Cherokees, like the Wagoneers, things like that. This is a straight up body on frame. Pretty rare to do that now in this current day and age. The only real ones are the Bronco and the Wrangler and the Gladiator that are pulling that off. Solid rear axle. Big play for me. Solid rear axle on the back of it, independent front suspension, which means you've got plenty of power ability in the back to take all that torque, but then in the front, you're able to get that more independent front suspension, which is much smoother off-road and allows for a little bit better articulation by independently allowing front tires to go up and down. 33-inch tires from the factory, 35's optional. The big spec that really made me crazy, almost 1,000 pound-feet of torque. My 392 has 470 pound-feet of torque, and that thing flies on 40s. 1,000 pound-feet is absolutely insanity. So I could only imagine that. 0 to 60 is talking about 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds. And then a lot of cool other features. So optional front and rear differential lockers, up to 3 foot of water fording, a ton built into this vehicle. And one thing that I actually read on Scout Motors, or was a press release, it said 80% of the issues or problems that you might have with the Scout can be fixed at home or fixed by your own hand tools. Mechanical latching doors, mechanical locks. It's not all Tesla style where you walk up and there's like no door handle. This is a very rigid vehicle. And we're going to talk about right now what makes this so special is the fact that this is not an EV strictly, but it has the ability to be a hybrid. This is what I think is going to disrupt the off-road industry, and it's something that I am very interested in. Both the Traveler and the Terra can be optioned to have a gas range extender, which will add up to 150 miles of EPA estimated range, because this isn't released yet, by using gasoline. This is the perfect mix. You've got a 350 mile estimated range from the battery pack, add on the range extender of 150 miles, you've got 500 miles of estimated range with using electricity or gas. So now when you're driving down the highway in a barren, dusty road in the middle of Nevada and you run out of EV, but you've got gasoline, you're good to go. There's no range anxiety. There's no fear that the infrastructure for my small town doesn't have the EV chargers for me. This might be the perfect combination of new tech with incorporating the infrastructure of gas pumps that are all over the country. I am extremely intrigued with this. Now, they are going to be built in South Carolina at, I think I said, $1 billion facility there. The ownership of Scout Motors is backed by Volkswagen, so it's a huge facility, South Carolina based, made in the USA, with an anticipated delivery date of 2027. So a little bit off, a little bit out there when it comes 2-3 years out, but they are building the hype now, and I would say that they got a lot of reservations already just by, I would say, adding that gas range extender. I was not interested in an EV of this nature, reviving the Scout, whatever you want to call it, if it was just purely an electric vehicle. But the fact that they've given off-roaders the ability to do both is something that I want to talk about right now. How can we incorporate that, or how does the future of the Wrangler and Gladiator look with this brand new vehicle? The cool thing that we're going to talk about today is, being that this vehicle is set to be delivered in the year 2027, is how will this disrupt the off-road industry? I would dare to say that some of the biggest competitors to this vehicle are obviously the Jeep Wrangler, the Jeep Gladiator, the Ford Bronco, Toyota's Tacoma, GMC Canyon ATX4s, a lot of other vehicles, the Rivian, things of that nature that kind of mix both of these in. But I think that this is really going to change the way that we see things as an automotive industry, and as well as the general public. Being that this is coming out in 2027 gives me a lot of opinions, or kind of things that I want to talk about in the future. The new Wrangler is slated, at least on those corporate public documents, to be released in 2028. Very similar timelines to this vehicle, as well as probably a refresh Wrangler is what we're due to see at that timeline. There's a big argument that would say that Scout Motors isn't going to invest all of this money into this type of vehicle without knowing or being pretty dang sure that that's going to be a big part of the future. What I think, in my opinion, is that the Wrangler and Gladiator are going to have to do something to step up and be maybe more modern and go this route. We've already got the current 4xe when it comes to the Wrangler, and the proposed 2025 Gladiator 4xe that's been in all sorts of documents, including a LinkedIn post by the Antonio guy of Jeep. He actually said the 2025 4xe Gladiator will be coming out. But once again, that is just a gasoline internal combustion engine that powers all this, and then you have a secondary battery. That engine, still the RPM and the torque flows through and powers the rear end, versus this vehicle where all the gasoline engine does is operate like a generator to your house and just make power. The Ram Charger is another one I wanted to bring up, because Stellantis already has one of these that they are launching. The Ram uses a 3.6 liter Pentastar engine, and all that engine does under the hood is just generate power for all of the batteries on board. I will tell you guys, I am a huge fan of that setup. And I know a lot of people are going to say, Matt, you've got a V8. Why do you want anything electric? I love my 392. It makes a ton of power, 470 horsepower. It sounds awesome. And you know, they say the same thing with EVs. You can microwave a steak, but it doesn't taste as good. That's the way I look at it. However, with this setup, I really think that this might be a good future alternative. This is very similar to diesel locomotives, where you've got a giant diesel engine up front that is powering an engine, and all that engine has to do is generate electricity for the batteries that actually propulse or push that diesel train forward. It's a very innovative design, and it leads to a lot less wear and tear on the engines, because there is a very predictable RPM, and there's not all that stress of the engine having to go through a transmission, transfer case, drive shafts, and then to the rear end. You're basically eliminating that to just having it produce power, which is very easy on it, and the reason that generators can run so long just by adding fuel to them. But what I think it's going to do for the off-road community is give people that wanted to maybe pick up a 4xe or wanted to pick up a Rivian, wanted to get a little bit into the EV, dip their toes, but were in a rural area or didn't know how to kind of mess with the EV side of it, a way to do so by having electric and gasoline as both of your energy options for a vehicle. Now let's kind of talk about what our personal opinion is on this, and how this really, in our opinion, is going to disrupt the future and really make automakers rethink what they're doing. That's not to say that the current electrification, the current vehicles that are out there that are straight EV or they're hybrid like we see in the 4xe aren't great, because they do have their purposes. I wanted to kind of come at this and stab at it in a few different lights. I will tell you guys, I did own a full EV for a little while. I had a Mustang Mach-E way back many moons ago, and I had it for a few months just because EVs were all the craze and I was waiting for another Jeep to be delivered. And I love the thing, but I loved it for specific reasons. I loved when I would drive to Costco, when I would go pick up the kids, when I would make local errands, because it felt like I was getting around for such a cheap price. And then at work, I was also named the Power Pirate, because I could just plug in, charge at work, and have a full gas tank when I went to leave. The biggest problem with the full EV is that when I went on long trips, or trips that went out of the county, out of kind of the state, it wasn't the vehicle I chose. The range was about 200 to 240 miles, depending on the weather and how cold it was. And I just really couldn't rely on having to know that there was a charging station. There were many times I pulled up on the highway, the charging station was closed or out of order, or there were vehicles using every port and I couldn't charge the vehicle. Now what am I doing? I can't run a battery pack behind this thing and just charge it out of the middle of nowhere. That's where the beauty of the Scout Motors is, because you can use this for putting around town, for keeping it in straight EV, going to pick up the kids, running your errands. But on a long trip, on an overlanding trip, on a cross-country trip, you can now use two different energy sources. If you've got an EV charger, you've got that power. If you've got a gas station, which is just about everywhere, you've got that version of power. This is kind of culminating the two of those and really making a perfect way for you to explore off-road, do your local trips, and make it more of a useful vehicle instead of, this is my EV for around town and this is my gas engine for going on long trips and off-roading. What we think is that this should have been launched first. This type of EV hybrid with the gas generator should have been released at the beginning of this, just because I think there was such a pushback from the general population to see anything EV, that maybe releasing it with a gas generator would make them feel more familiar with this type of vehicle. Being able to go to your local pump, put gas into it, and know that you're okay, versus having to try and find an EV charger no matter where you are, really alleviates a lot of that range anxiety and a lot of the biggest fears that came with an EV. And I can almost picture myself driving a Scout Traveler like this. I have a four-door, you got the kids in the back, you're going cross-country, you're running that EV all the way down to the end, run 300 miles out of it, run 150 miles out of the gas generator, stop for an hour because you just got 500 miles of range, charge the EV battery, fill up the gasoline in the back, and now you're set for another 500 miles. But going on an overlanding trip, charge the EV all the way up, fill the gas all the way up, make it to your destination maybe on pure battery, put some Rotopacks on the side of this thing, and now you're set. You've still got the gas generator, you've got the gasoline to keep refilling that gas generator, and you're pretty much good to go. I think that this is going to be a phenomenal addition to the off-road community, and I think that it's going to really make Jeep and a lot of auto manufacturers need to rethink the way they're doing things, or maybe they already have. Are you guys interested in this is what I want to know in the comments. How many of you, maybe we'll drop a poll in the community tab, how many of you have gone on and reserved one of these, or now that we're talking about it, would you at least go on and check it out as a vehicle that you could see yourself driving? I want to also know, if this was in the Wrangler, what do you think the price point would be? I'm gonna open up that can of worms, Ryan, because this is claiming that it's gonna be around the $60,000 MSRP with current eligible federal rebates of like $7,500 for some of the EV vehicles. You're talking around a $50,000 mark. Dude, if we can get a four-door with body on frame, rear locker, all these features for $50K, Ryan, that's like a Sport S right now, and you've got all of this built in. So definitely a lot to consider, but we're excited to see this. Maybe, should we pull out our phone and reserve one?
Yeah, we should probably do that.
All right, which one do you want to reserve, Ryan?
Both.
You want to reserve both? I'm personally a bigger fan of the Traveler. Yeah, we can reserve it. It's $100 to reserve. I think a lot of people have already done that, but yeah, I kind of want to reserve. I think the Traveler is the coolest. Yeah, it says entry model starting as low as $50,000 with available incentives. Retail prices starting under $60,000. Initial production is targeted for 2027. Biggest fear is that when you select an energy system, it makes you either pick electric or electric and gas. I wonder how much that's gonna add. Either way, guys, we just threw out $100 and reserved a Scout Traveler electric with the gas generator, and now we have a little bit of a waiting game, Ryan, probably till 2027 until these are starting to be produced, but we're excited for this. I think that competition is good in any market, and I would dare and venture to say that the Ford Bronco being released a few years back was probably the biggest thing that pushed Jeep into what they did with the Wrangler. Adding the 392, adding Extreme Recon, and putting a lot of those features in, competition drives competitiveness, and that's exactly what we got with this. We actually had a video from 2 channels ago when Ryan and I were working there, is the Bronco, the Jeep Wrangler killer, and that was almost up to 1 million views the last time we checked. It was very topical, and I think a vehicle like this is probably going to do the same as we go into the future. So we threw $100 onto it and let it ride. That's gonna be the DRC Scout Harvester, Scout, whatever it's called. What's it called? Traveler. Yeah. I don't even know what it's called. Yeah. We're gonna call it Scout Harvester. In 2 years, we'll hopefully be able to look back on this video and say, hey, you know what, that was a good idea because these things are really cool. Or they're gonna pull a Cybertruck and it's gonna take like 4 years for them to come out. Who knows? It'll be neat to see, and I'm excited to see how Jeep responds to all of this. I think that they're gonna have a pretty good response. I really am looking forward to that. Maybe we'll see some things coming up in the next week or so at SEMA. But either way, guys, let us know down below in the comments if you reserved one, what your thoughts are on it, and just let's chat down below. A lot of you guys have been ordering a ton of cool products from us. I always want to give that pitch. The RGB grill lights for the 2024 Wrangler and Gladiator, we are working on them for that style grill, if you can see it, Ryan. The small holes, and then your old style with the larger holes. So we should have those available here within the next few weeks. We're just working on some things and making them perfect for it. So we're just really excited about how well this is going, especially as a product. That first batch, the pre-order batch, is gonna be out here ASAP. We just got word back and that'll be here soon. So we'll be shipping those out as soon as physically possible and also updating you guys because they really just flew off the shelves in like the first night. It was crazy. So thank you guys so much for the love and support. And as always, Ryan's behind the camera, me, I'm in front of it talking to you, and we want you to get out there and earn yours.